Hello and welcome to the Sapiomed Medical Podcast, where we simplify science, inspire learning, and amplify purpose. I'm your host, Daniela Hinudro, and today we venture into one of the most fundamental and yet fascinating topics in hematology: haematopoiesis, the origin story of your blood. Whether you're a medical student, a medical laboratory scientist, a clinician, or simply someone curious about how blood is made, this episode is for you. Today we are going to go deep into the process that gives rise to blood cells, white blood cells, and then platelets. We will explore the sites of hematopoiesis, the types of stem cells involved, how they differentiate, the roles of the various growth factors, and the clinical relevance of this powerful biological process. Let's start from the very beginning. Now, what is haematopoiesis? Haematopoiesis is the process by which all blood cells are formed. Every second in our body, millions of blood cells are produced and released into our bloodstream, and it all begins in the bone marrow. So the word haematopoiesis itself comes from two Greek words: haema, which means blood, and then poiesis, which means to make. So haematopoiesis literally means the making of blood. This process ensures the continuous renewal of blood cells throughout life. Cells that transport oxygen, fight infections, and stop bleeding. And remarkably, they all trace back to one type of master cell called the hematopoietic stem cells. It is often abbreviated as HSC. Now let's take a look at the location or the sites of haematopoiesis from the embryonic stage to the adult stage. So the location of haematopoiesis often evolves as we develop. So from the embryonic stage between 0 to 2 months, it's mostly occur in a yolk sac, and this is called primitive haematopoiesis. Now at the fetal stage, that is between the months of 2 to 7, it shifts from the liver and from the yolk sac to the liver and the spleen. And at this stage, it is called definitive blood formation or definitive haematopoiesis. And then finally, at the fetal stage of the adult life, that is after 7 months, the process moves to the bone marrow. And these are primarily the flat bones, like the sternum, the pelvis, and then the rex. So probably we are talking about the axial skeleton. Now in adults, active bone is found in the axial skeleton, and under certain diseases, the liver and the spleen may resume their blood production role. And when the liver and the spleen resume their blood production role, the process is termed extramedullary haematopoiesis. Alright. So now let's talk about the hematopoietic stem cells. So at the center of the hematopoiesis or hematopoiesis is the hematopoietic stem cell. And these stem cells have unique properties. And one of their property is its multipotent ability. When we say something is multipotent, we are trying to say that they give rise to all forms or types of blood cells. So multi and then potent. So it have multiple capabilities. Then we have self-renewing. That is its ability to reproduce themselves over time. So the hematopoietic stem cells reside in the bone marrow niche. That is, it's like an environment, like a microenvironment that supports the growth and the protection of the hematopoietic stem cells, purposely for differentiation. So from the hematopoietic stem cell, there is two huge lineages that comes out from it. So we have the myeloid lineage and then the lymphoid lineage. Now each lineage gives rise to different types of cells that performs unique function and unique properties of their own. So we are going to take a look at the myeloid lineage and then the lymphoid lineage as well. So the myeloid lineage is also known as the first responders and the builders, and they give rise to a number of blood cell types like the erythrocyte, which is commonly known to us as the red blood cells, the megakaryocytes, which is later fragmented into platelets, and then the monocytes, which becomes macrophages in tissues to engulf pathogens, and then the granulocytes. Under the granulocytes, we are talking about the neutrophils, the eosinophils, the basophils, and all that. So this forms the myeloid lineage. And you know that erythrocytes are responsible for the carriage of food oxygen via the hemoglobin, right? And then for the megakaryocytes, we know that they gradually disintegrate or fragment into platelets, which is also vital in the clothing process. And then for monocytes, they mostly come into tissues of macrophages, and one of their significant role is to engulf pathogen. And for the granulocytes, we can classify them to the neutrophils, which in our previous podcast, we talked about the function and the roles of neutrophils, eosinophils, and the basophils as well. So probably, if you haven't listened to that podcast, you should go and then check it out. Now, this lineage plays major role in innate immunity, hemostasis, and tissue repair. So when we talk about innate immunity, we have our immunology video. You can also go and check what innate immunity is. Then we have hemostasis. We are talking about clot formation and the tissue repair as well. So that is for the myeloid lineage. Now let's talk about the lymphoid lineage. The lymphoid lineage is mostly specialized in immunity, and the lymphoid lineage produces B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, and then the natural killer cell. So when we're talking about the entire immune system, that is the adaptive immunity, we are mostly talking about the lymphoid lineage of Haematopoiesis. So all the members under the lymphoid lineage, they are mostly or actively involved in adaptive immunity. So we talk about the B lymphocytes that is responsible for the production of plasma cells, which further leads to the production of antibodies. We have the T lymphocytes that also helps in cell-mediated immunity. Then we have the natural killer cells, or the NK cells, which also destroy viral infection and cancerous infection as well. Now, these are essential components of the adaptive immune system. They are offering what targeted and long-term immunity, as well as I said earlier on adaptive immunity. So we're talking about the lymphoid lineage, we're talking about the adaptive immune system. Now, there should definitely be some form of control in hematopoiesis, because when the blood cells keeps its production constantly without any control, it's going to lead to a whole lot of systemic, errors. So in fact, if you take a look at the body, there's always hemostasis, and hemostasis is responsible for what? For balance or for regulation. So the body has to make sure that it shuts one down when there is a production of another. So that is homeostasis. So hematopoiesis too has its own regulation, and these substances that are responsible for the regulation of hematopoiesis are mostly called growth factors and cytokines. So for instance, if there is an overproduction of red blood cells and there is no need for that overproduction, there is definitely going to be some form of signals to halt the erythropoietic processes. But when I talk about erythropoietic processes, I am trying to say to halt the red cell formation. So we are going to take a look at the growth factors. So first of all, we have the erythropoietin, which is oftenly abbreviated as EPO, which is responsible for the stimulation of red blood cell formation. Now, erythropoiesis is mostly produced in the kidney, the peritubular cells of the kidney, and it is mostly released during hypoxia. And once it is released into the bloodstream, it goes straight forward into its target organ to ensure the production of red blood cells. Then we have the thrombopoietin. So the thrombopoietin also stimulates platelet formation or production. Then we have the granulocyte colony stimulating factor. So we have the GCSF. So we talk about granulocyte colony stimulating factor. You could see that the word itself is self-explanatory. So granulocyte colony stimulating factor, it boosts granulocyte production, it boosts neutrophils production. Then we have the various interleukins, interleukin 7 especially, which also drives lymphocyte development as well. So that is for the growth factors. And then we have the bone marrow niche. So for the bone marrow niche, we are talking about the micro environment that surrounds the bone marrow. So under that, we are just going to talk about the environmental factors. We're talking about the nurturing capabilities of the environment that the hematopoietic stem cells seem to find themselves. So for the bone marrow niche, they provide protective and nurturing environment for the hematopoietic stem cells, and then they include stromal cells, extracellular matrices, and signaling molecules. Of course, it definitely has to need signaling molecules. Okay, now this regulation ensures the right cell is produced at the right time and in the right quantity. So for instance, when someone gets an accident, the person begins to bleed or overbleed, there's definitely signals that are sent to the erythropoietic stem cells. So there's release of erythropoietin that goes straight forward into the bloodstream to the target organ to enhance the production of red blood cells. So you can see once there is profuse bleeding, there's excess production of red blood cells, or there is active hematopoiesis to compensate for the trauma or for the immediate loss of blood. So that is how the regulation occurs. Okay, now let's talk about the clinical relevance of hematopoiesis. So to understand hematopoiesis, you have to correlate it with its clinical significance. So first of all, we can talk about leukemia. So in leukemia, there is abnormal proliferation of immature white blood cells. So that particular thing that ensures the production of white blood cells, right, is compromised, or that regulates the production of white blood cells is compromised. So the white blood cells or the stem cells for the production of the white blood cells becomes cancerous, and then they begin to overproduce. So abnormal proliferation of immature white blood cells is leukemia. Then we have anemia, reduced production or increased loss of red blood cells. So we have the aplastic anemia as well. So when there is severe damage of the erythropoietic stem cells, especially, there is what we call aplastic anemia, and it can affect the production of red blood cells, leading towards a decline or its decline. Yeah. Then we have that's the aplastic malaria, that's complete bone marrow failure. Yeah. Then we have the myeloproliferative disorders, the excessive production of certain blood cell type. Yeah. Then we have bone marrow transplantation. So the hematopoiesis process is relevant because during the replacement of diseased bone marrow, you need to consider all these things before you can do that bone marrow transplantation and all that. So there are a lot of medications that are also used therapeutically during these clinical processes, like EPO, which is also known as erythropoietin. It's a medication that directly releases erythropoietin exactly into the bloodstream for it to affect the target organ to enhance the production of blood cells. Then we have a medication also called the CSF, which is granulocyte colony-forming or colony-stimulating factor, which is also used in chemotherapy, or people living with chronic diseases as well. Now let's do a quick wrap up of this. So hematopoiesis is basically the origin of all blood cells, and then it starts with the hematopoietic stem cells, and then diverges into myeloid and lymphoid lineages. Then we can also say that they are also highly regulated. Yes, they are highly regulated. So they are influenced by growth factors and cytokines, and then also by the bone marrow niche. We talk about bone marrow niche, the bone marrow environment, and then disruptions in hematopoiesis lead to serious illness as well. So understanding this foundational concept will empower you to appreciate the elegance and the beauty of human biology, and also the intricacies of it. Now, if this episode helped you to understand hematopoiesis better, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the podcast for more high quality medical content. Share with a fellow student, professional, or a teacher. Follow us at Sapiomed for infographics, summaries, and bonus materials. Remember, blood is not just a fluid. It's a system, a language, and a story. And hematopoiesis is where it all begins. This is Daniel Ahinudru, and you have been listening to the Sapiomed Medical Podcast, where we turn complexity into clarity. Until next time, stay curious and stay committed. Bye-bye.